afternoon. I'm Detective Majors with the Royal Police Department. I'm specifically assigned to the Special Victims Unit. We investigate crimes against at-risk adults in our vulnerable population. To be clear, this population are far more likely to be victims of crime, given their diagnosis, whether mental or age. I want to speak specifically about the impact of the short detention limits and requiring a warrant before accessing AOPR data. I have a case. In 2025, an elderly woman suffering from dementia was violently assaulted and forcibly thrown from a vehicle, resulting in seriously bodily injury. She had a femoral neck fracture of her thigh. There were no witnesses who could provide identifying information. Surveillance video from the area where she was found showed a white pickup truck, but the license plate was not visible. This case was initially assigned to a Denver detective because the woman lives in Denver and she said she was picked up in Denver. It was later determined that the crime occurred in Aurora, and then it was transferred to me. By that time, 30 days had already passed. Using a narrow ALPR query limited to the time frame where I saw the truck on the surveillance camera, I was able to locate only one truck, a white Ford F-150, consistent with the vehicle seen in the surveillance footage. This information was not probable cause. It was an investigative lead that allowed me to identify the registered owner, conduct follow-up investigations, and then develop probable cause that were not available via traditional investigative methods. Ultimately, this led to filing charges and a conviction. If the LPR data was automatically deleted after 5 days or even 30 days, that information would have been gone and not available to me. This violent felony against a vulnerable adult would have remained unsolved. I also want to quickly address the suggestion that investigators should obtain a search warrant before accessing this type of data. At the time of the query, we did not have a specific license plate, suspect, or registered owner information. A warrant will not issue unless you have particular details, meaning that it must identify the specific place, person, or in this case, a vehicle. We cannot constitutionally obtain a warrant for all white pickup trucks in the area. I support legitimate law enforcement purpose requiring auditing, training, and accountability to ensure this technology is used correctly. However, the retention limits that do not reflect real investigative timelines, especially in cases involving vulnerable adults and victims, will unintentionally prevent justice. I respectfully urge you to consider how Senate Bill 70's retention limits and warrant requirements would affect violent felony investigations coming to a proper conclusion.
All right, thank you, sir.
My name is Johnny Gruesing. I was an FBI agent here in Denver, employed from 1996 to 2021. Having worked serial killer and missing person cases, I was asked to assist a local task force to identify a serial rapist following an attack in January 2011 of a Colorado School of Mines student by a man who spent hours in her apartment. He repeatedly raped her. He bragged about stalking her for months. He made her meticulously clean herself in the scene, and he threatened that worse would happen if she called police. Local police had determined the attacker was responsible for similar rapes over the past year of elderly women in Aurora and Westminster, and an attempted sex assault at Lakewood. The Golden Police Department detectives spent days looking at surveillance footage around the victim's apartment and noted a white pickup with a broken rearview mirror that had circled the complex multiple times prior to the attack. The task force conducted numerous neighborhood searches. We examined similar rapist cases in Kansas and other states. We conducted extensive interviews and crime scene investigations. On February 9, 2011, an analyst from the Lakewood Police Department told the task force of her search for suspicious vehicles at the Lakewood victim's home. A woman had called police late that evening to report a suspicious pickup parked on the street with a man inside. The pickup was a 1993 white Mazda registered to a Lakewood man named Mark O'Leary. Lakewood patrol cars had cameras that automatically took pictures of every license plate they passed. The result was a searchable database of license tag numbers indexed by time and location. The current license plate number 935VHX brought up a photo a patrol car had taken of O'Leary, standing by his white Mazda in the driveway of his house. This happened only 2 hours prior to the August 2010 attack of the widow in Westminster. The truck, along with O'Leary's size, build, and complexion, matched what the 4 victims had described. The FBI assisted in surreptitiously collecting his DNA, which matched the DNA of the 4 crime scenes. O'Leary was arrested and charged with the crimes. On December 12, 2011, O'Leary was sentenced to 327 years. He pleaded guilty to raping the women mentioned in the greater Denver area. I interviewed Mark O'Leary after sentencing for almost 6 hours, and he confessed to stalking other women in Colorado, raping multiple women in the state of Washington, and women overseas while he was stationed there for the military. O'Leary told me that a monster lived inside him, and he was glad he was arrested because he fed off his victim's fear.
Thank you, sir. I apologize. I'll need to ask you to wrap. Allow a few folks to go a bit over. Sir, please go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Jeff Jensen. I'm the Deputy Chief of Colorado Springs Police Department. I am testifying in opposition to this bill on behalf of the City of Colorado Springs and the Colorado Association of Chiefs of Police. I think the best way for me to describe the detrimental impact of this bill is by telling you about violent crime that happened in Colorado Springs. My goal is to highlight how investigations happen and how crimes are solved in our communities. Last year, we responded to a reported kidnapping. We learned the victim was at the park with a friend when a stranger in a pickup truck approached her. The suspect forced her into the pickup truck, then drove to another location where he violently sexually assaulted her before letting her go. The only available visual evidence was a grainy nighttime video. It didn't capture a license plate, an identifiable driver, or a unique personal identifier. Through careful review, the most we could learn was general vehicle characteristics like the make, model, unique doors, and vehicle damage, but it was still an important investigative lead. As soon as they could, personnel in the Real-Time Crime Center started a long process of conducting searches in ALPR databases and refining them to try to locate the vehicle. Their searches included information in the database that was more than 72 hours old. After many hours, they finally found an image that matched all known observable characteristics of the vehicle. At no point prior to identifying a specific vehicle was the probable cause tied to a particular person, place, account, or record. The investigation progressed from generalized observations to individualized suspicion, not the reverse. There was tremendous investigative work completed in this case that led to the suspect being arrested just over a week after it was reported. This is not a case which we could have gotten a search warrant for to do those searches. And while it may sound like an emergency based on the seriousness of the crime, we would face an uphill battle trying to argue it was legally exigent. If Senate Bill 70 had been in effect and we did the very same investigative work in those databases, we may have been facing the reality of the case being dismissed. I respectfully request that you vote no on Senate Bill 70.
All right. Thank you. Any questions for our witnesses?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Detective Majors, I believe it was?
Yes. Yes, sir.
I have a question for you. You talked about, basically leads. That's a lot of what you're basing your investigation on leads, not actual probable cause. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Because if you have to get a search warrant every time you have a lead, that's clearly not the way police work operates.
That's correct. A lead, I can't write a search warrant off of the lead, but I can follow the lead to get more information that would potentially let me get a search warrant. Specifically for my case with the white truck, after I developed the lead, identified the person I was driving it, I could potentially wrote a search warrant to see if this woman's DNA was in the truck or any other identifiable information, but not just for the truck itself.
So, would it really be any different if you got a tip from a neighbor or someone who said, I saw a truck out there around the time, and that's a lead too. Did you have to go get a warrant for that?
But I'm not.
Thank you.
Any other questions for this panel? Senator Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is for the gentleman on the end, you're right, my left. And I might not be able to answer on this because it might be sensitive, and so I understand. But I guess I would like to hear some elaboration on why the warrant wouldn't be issued in that case. It was 72 hours, it was beyond 72 hours when it was realized what specific date was needed. And you believe that you would have a hard time meeting the exigent circumstances standard. And I would like to hear some more about that.
Thank you for the question, sir. So, probable cause, requires that there's evidence of a crime is going to be found in a particular place or associated with a particular person. In this instance, we had a general idea of the year and make of the vehicle, and that was it. And what the image was able to provide was that there were vehicle characteristics that was damage to the vehicle. So it would be impossible to have the level of specificity that is necessary to obtain a search warrant, to search the database, because there wasn't a license plate, we didn't know the registered owner, so we would have been doing a very generic search, similar to doing a neighborhood canvas saying, hey, has anybody seen a vehicle that matches this description? So we would not have been able to.
Senator Henderson, will you follow up?
Yeah, so I guess the other part is the exigent circumstances piece of this.
So regarding why, so I think I understand the question, sir. So in this instance, we wouldn't be able to argue exigency because we were not in active pursuit of the suspect. I would find it very difficult that the courts would feel that we had exigency because although the crime is absolutely horrendous, I would not, or the lead detective would not be able to articulate that the offender presented an imminent and immediate threat.
Okay, thank you.
Members, further questions on this matter? Seeing none, thank you for speaking with us today. All right, next panel will be folks who signed up